everyone, welcome back to our channel, and today I'll be differentiating two kinds of lesson plans: the traditional lesson plan or the detailed lesson plan, and that of the 3 I's, or the interaction, introduction, and integration. Now this plan is what I followed when I had my pseudo demonstration on Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And like what I told you in my previous video, it would be a lot easier to teach if you are guided by the plan. So this is what I followed. But I'll be differentiating the two by means of enumerating the different parts of the plan. I will start with a detailed plan, or the traditional format of lesson planning. And this is usually what I suggest the new teachers to come up with, specifically the practice teachers. They really have to master coming up with detailed plans, because once they master coming up with a detailed plan and what to include in the different parts of the plan, it would just be easier for them to shift to another kind of lesson planning. If they would intend to come up with the 3 I's or the 4 A's or the UBIDI's or simply the daily lesson lag, then it would just be easier for them. They really have to start with the traditional format of planning. So in the traditional format, you always have to start with objectives. Okay, and in the objectives, you have to make sure that your objectives are smart, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Though I'll be coming up with a separate video on how to formulate sound outcomes or objectives. Now, why at this point we are already using outcomes, not objectives? Because the kind of education that we have ay nag-shift na from into outcomes-based education, meaning we are very much focused on what the students could do at the end of the lesson, what the students could learn at the end of the lesson, and what would they do with the kind of learning that they gained from the teacher. That's why it becomes outcomes. But you know, outcomes and objectives are interchangeably used by a lot of educators. But if I try to, differentiate the two, I would do it in the perspective of teacher and that of the students. Kasi yung objective, this is crafted in the teacher's perspective. These are what the teachers would want to accomplish at the end of the period. But the outcomes, these are crafted on students' perspective. These are the things that the students would do at the end of the lecture, and this is the application of the students' understanding of the concept. Alright, it becomes the outcome. Okay, so that is the first thing that you have to, that's the first part rather of the traditional plan. Next, after, alright, let me work on this. After this objective, the second part would be on the subject matter. Alright, the subject matter, you just have to include there the topic, the materials, and the reference. It's really very important that you include your reference. And after the subject matter, the third part is the procedure. And under procedure, the first of which you have preparatory drill. The preparatory drill are the preliminary activities or the routinary activities. These are called routinary activities because it's you do it every meeting with the students every day. And this includes the prayer. Okay, you always have to start with a prayer and end with a prayer, your greetings, and the checking of the attendance. So these are the preliminary activities or the routinary activities. And after that, you have your review of the past lesson. That's under the second item under preparatory drill. The review of the past lesson. And the review of the past lesson should be done by students, not by the teachers. The teacher should not say, alright, yesterday we studied the blah blah and the blah blah and the blah blah. Everything must be given by the students. The only job of the teacher is to lead them, to lead the students, to arrive at a particular answer or do a particular task. Okay, so the second part under preliminary is the review of the past lesson. After which you have motivation. Okay, and the motivation should not eat a lot of your time. It's known to be motivation because you are just trying to arouse the interest of the learners. And the motivation must be very much connected with your content. So, there were a lot of instances na I noticed na yung mga teachers, motivation na raw pag nagpakanta sila, na hindi naman konektado doon sa pag-uusapan. These are not part of motivation. These are just breaking the ice activities, because motivation should give students idea as to what is to be studied. This would elicit your prior knowledge about what is to be studied in that particular hour. So your motivation should only be maximum of 5 minutes of the time. So it shouldn't eat like 20 minutes of the time, or else that becomes the meat of the lecture. So right after motivation, we have, let me just check on this one. We have your presentation of the lesson. This is the second part. So in the presentation of the lesson, then you just have to tell them that today you will be given a certain activity and ganon. So it's just, you just have to present the lesson. And the third part rather, would be the discussion. It's here in the discussion that all group activities are to be done by the students. And I would like to reiterate, because we are already on the OBE, the teacher does not discuss the entire lesson anymore, right? The teacher is just creating opportunities for the students to study the lesson for themselves. That is why we have group activities. That is why the students are given differentiated instruction, because this is what they are going to do. The teacher just giving instruction, just facilitating the discussion. After the discussion, you already have your activity, all right? Evaluation, they say this, where you are going to put all the activities and the students would present their group outputs, all right? And at the end, others would include enrichment activity, but others would end it with summary, the summary of the lesson. Okay, this is what they have learned. The summary of the lesson should also be given by the students. And the last part would be the assignment. So every day, all right, it's because this is the last part of the lesson plan, then you have to give them assignment. Okay, so that's the traditional format. That's the format rather of the traditional plan. In the detailed planning, okay, as you can see here in this particular side, in the detailed plan, you have the teacher's activity, the column. You must have 2 columns. The first of which is the teacher's activity, the activity to be done by the teacher, and the second one is the student's activity, the responses, the possible responses of the students. So that's one of the very good thing about planning. You tend to think of the possible answers of the students, and while thinking of possible questions of the students, and while thinking of the possible questions, you are also thinking possible ways of answering this question. So you really would be very much prepared for that matter. Okay, so that's the traditional format. Now I'll be presenting the 3 I's. All right, I'll be giving you the exact plan for the 3I. This is also what I followed in my Zudo demonstration. Kaya siya tinawag na 3Is. Everything that is to be done by the students should be categorized into 3. First of which is the introduction. The second of which will be the interaction, and the third of which will be the integration. So in the 3Is, again, you would start with the outcomes. All right, you have to have your outcomes, and in the road not taken that we came up with, I have prepared 3 outcomes, like I paraphrase the poem, interpret the meaning, and extract the life's meaning embedded in the poem. So right after the outcomes, I already immediately have written there the introduction, and in the introduction part, under the introduction part, you have eliciting prior knowledge. So doon sa traditional format, ang tawag mo doon ay motivation. Pero dito sa 3Is, under introduction, you have your eliciting prior knowledge. Alright? You elicit prior knowledge or the schema of the students by means of giving appropriate activity. By means of giving activity that would arouse their interests, and at the same time, activity that has something to do with the meat of the discussion. Okay, so after that, Kaya siya tinawag na introduction because you only introduce the lesson itself. So in here, you have the activity 1. Kung makikita niyo yung plano natin under prior knowledge, you have the activity 1, my decision matters. I love putting titles in all the activities that I make. Alright. So, maganda rin kasi pag may title kasi parang nakaka-engganyo siya. It's quite interesting sa part ng mga estudyante. So, activity 1 is titled My Decision Matters. And then the activity here, the teacher groups the class into 4. Everything is stated there. There is no need to include possible students' responses. All instructions lang ang nandyan. And under the eliciting prior knowledge, right after they come up with the group's decision, then it would be processing question and then essential question. Alright? So, right after the introduction, we have the second I, which is the interaction. And in the interaction, dito na mangyayari yung teacher-student interaction or student-to-student interaction, or student and class interaction. And the first thing that you have to do in the interaction part is the development of knowledge. It's where you are going to present them the idea or the content that is very much connected to the next activity. And after which, you have your second part of the interaction, which is exploration. It's there, they're going to work with their group mates. Kasi yan pang uso sa OBE, hindi na dapat nagle-lecture ang teacher taga-tanong na lang. So, in the exploration, I also have another activity there which I titled, You Give Me Meaning, because this class will be grouped again into 4 and they will be working in different tasks. Ang tawag po dito, they will be working in the different tasks and then they'll be presenting the group output. Pag lahat sila ay nakapag-present, that means you are done interpreting or you are done discussing the entire topic. So right after exploration, mga group work na ito, ang title ko doon sa demo ko ay You Give Me Meaning. And then after which, in the interaction, you already have the third part, the third I, which is integration. At ang tawag nila dito ay yung sa literature class, they call the post-reading activity. But there are different ways on how to do integration. Una kasi, pwede kang interdisciplinary, intradisciplinary, or transdisciplinary. Yung intradisciplinary, yung English subject, ay na-connect mo siya sa 4 macro skills, the topics that are within the subject, that are within the area. Okay, kung English, in-integrate mo yung topic sa 4 macro skills. Pero kapag yung English, in-integrate mo siya sa ibang subject area like that of science or of math, that becomes interdisciplinary. But in my case, what I did is that transdisciplinary because I have integrated my lesson to values, to real life lessons, to personal experience. Alright? That's why in my integration part, I asked them to come up with a skit showing their personal experience about coming up with decisions. And that's how I ended up with my activity. So if I were to judge, if I were to choose rather, I would prefer the 3 I's because for me it's more interactive, it's a lot easier to do. Though yung 3 I's na to ay parang pinag-combine lang naman na parts doon sa traditional plan. But whatever plan it is that you have to make, one thing for certain, you have to make sure that the plan is student-centered. The job of the teacher is merely to facilitate the discussion, and your plan has proper alignment of everything, of all its elements, of all its parts, so that at the end of the period, you would be happy because everything would be done as smoothly as possible and that the topic is well understood by the learners. So now that I presented the differences, the different kinds of these 2 plans, it's up to to choose what plan are you comfortable with, what kind of plan are you comfortable with, and ano ang mas madali para sa inyo. Alright, so I hope this video helps, and in my next videos, I'll be discussing how are we going to formulate sound outcomes and how should we align that with the different assessment activities that we will give our students. Alright, bye-bye. See you next time.